If you're an artist, whether it's your career or just a hobby, you know the challenge that is finding your art style. It can come to people so naturally sometimes, but I'm not one of those people. And honestly, it might be the case for most artists. So let's talk about how I found my art style, because trust me, it wasn't a quick and easy process. But before we start, let's do a quick, "Hey, what you drawing?" segment. The art you're watching me draw is some promotional art for my webcomic Outcasts. Since we're nearly into April, I thought it'd be fun to draw some of my characters in cute spring outfits, and along with some cute animals. If you'd like to see more art like this, or come to get to know more about my characters, come check out my webcomic Outcasts for free on Tapas, and come join my Patreon. Links to both are in the description below. And let's get into it. I've always been into drawing since I was a little kid, and even from a young age, I was really into making my own hand-drawn comics. And yes, I still cringe a lot when I think about it. Was the art bad? Maybe, but I was having so much fun designing stories and drawing that I didn't even care what other people thought. It was good enough for me, I loved it, and that was what was important to me. Cut to elementary school and art class. I had a guy friend who we'll just call Wyatt. I always thought Wyatt was a naturally gifted artist, especially when it came to drawing realistic looking art. And I was so mesmerized by his talent. I wanted to draw just like him. And so began my long journey of trying to make realistic art. But just no matter what happened, or how much I tried, or how much time went by, I just couldn't reach that goal. No matter what I did, my art just didn't look anything like Wyatt's. Granted, I was never jealous of him or his talent. We even stayed friends throughout high school, but I just felt so defeated, crestfallen even. What was I doing wrong? Why couldn't I just do it right? Was there something wrong with me? I stopped drawing for a while after that, and threw myself into writing and watching cartoons. A lot of writing and watching cartoons. And then I realized I wanted to draw my pictures and character designs and backgrounds of what I was writing. I'm a very visual person, so despite everything that had happened before, I started to draw again. Was the character art perfect? No. Was the background art perfect? No. But I didn't even care anymore. And wouldn't you know it, during my senior year in college, those same writings became the scaffolding of my now webcomic, Outcasts. So, now that you've heard my story and about my art journey, what are my actual tips and advice? How can you find your art style? It can be tricky, and it might seem like it takes a long time, but here's what I've gathered through my artistic journey. Point 1. Don't overly compare yourself to others. If there's one thing I've learned from my experience, it's that sometimes comparing your art to others can be really damaging. Extremely damaging even. I mean, I compared my art to my friends constantly throughout the years. And look where that got me during that time. Now, I want to point out, it is not a bad thing to admire other artists and their pieces. On the contrary, I think you really should. There's nothing wrong with admiring someone. But remember, it's a very slippery slope between admiring someone's works and obsessing over making your art look exactly like their works. Just make sure you're not overly comparing your art to others, and you will be just fine. Point number 2. Take inspiration from other forms of media that you like. As you might have taken from my story, I began to watch a lot of cartoons, mainly animation, when I stopped drawing, and it was mainly Disney shows as well. And while I never copied one show's art style, I took inspiration from all the character designs, aspects, and tropes that I loved. Brave female characters, magic powers, enemies to lovers, and so much more. And my art style and writing improved so much after I took all of the designs, aspects, and tropes that I loved into account. Don't feel pressured into making art based on what you think your audience will like, because that will change. Make the art that you want to make. Point number 3, use references, and don't be afraid to make it your own. This kind of goes hand in hand with my previous point, but it's definitely worth mentioning. A lot of you might not know this, but I use reference poses and pictures for my art, especially if I struggle with drawing something that I want to draw, but I'm just not very good at drawing yet. Of course, that comes with practice and time, but using references when drawing sometimes gets a bad rap. But I want to let you know this. It is okay to use references. And if you want, you can always pick and choose what aspects of the reference you want to include in your art. Take the art I'm drawing for example. For all of these pieces, I used references. Both poses, backgrounds, you name it. It's not bad or wrong to use pose references, 3D models, anything like that. So just don't shy away from that. And my last and final point number 4, don't let those mean critics get to you. Most of us artists and creators know that the realm of creative expression isn't all sunshine and rainbows. Quite the contrary, actually. There are jerks who will openly insult and bash your art style. Writing, comics, whatever you make or share with the world, there will be critics. Now, don't get me wrong, some critics can be very kind and considerate, giving you helpful advice and tips to make your art even better. And those people are really great. I'm talking about the jerks who don't care about your feelings or your art. They just want to tear you down and your confidence. It goes without saying, but don't take that mean criticism to heart. And I know, it's easier said than done. But the more you can distinguish between helpful advice and mean insults, you'll be content with making what you want to make. So at the end, what I want you to take away from this is this. Art can be tough, yes. But as long as you go into it with the right mindset and have fun with it, your art style will come to you. What you like, what inspirations you take. It's a mirror into what makes your art and yourself unique. And I hope you never forget that. Have you ever sat down to draw for quote-unquote 5 minutes and then looked up to realize 4 hours have passed? You haven't eaten, but you've successfully redesigned an entire character's wardrobe? If that sounds familiar, you're probably a neurodivergent artist. After my last video about growing up neurodivergent, so many of you have reached out saying that you struggle with the same brain chaos when trying to create. So today I'm sharing about how I went from being overwhelmed by a blank canvas to actually finishing my pieces. As someone who's on the autism spectrum and someone who is also looking into getting an ADHD diagnosis, the hardest part of any video like this isn't actually the drawing. It's just the pressure of opening the app. There's this specific kind of ADHD paralysis where you have 10 amazing ideas for maybe a new webcomic panel, but because you can't decide which one is perfect or which one is good enough, you end up staring at the ceiling for 2 hours instead. Then, on the flip side decides to happen. Hyperfocus. I'll finally start on a small detail of a piece, like the highlights in a character's eyes. And then suddenly I'm in a trance. I've forgotten to eat, I've forgotten to enter my texts, and I've just spent 3 hours on a detail that most people won't even see. It's a superpower, yes, but it's a messy one, because it usually leaves me completely burnt out by the time I get to the actual quote-unquote important parts of the piece. My digital workspace usually looks exactly like my real-life desks. It looks like a beautiful disaster. I have layers named something that looks like it was slammed on a keyboard or Final version 3. In my neurodivergent story time, I talked about how I had to mask this chaos to fit in. But as an artist, I realized that this mess is just part of the process. The chaos isn't the enemy. It's just part of the raw material. I used to think I was just bad at being an adult, but once I started looking at these patterns as ADHD and autism traits instead of personal failures, I could actually build the tools to work with them. So, let's move past the chaos. Here are the 3 things that actually helped me finish this drawing. Now, let's get on to the actual toolkit. Hack number 1 is something I call microtasking. One of the biggest hurdles for an ADHD brain is the wall of awful. That feeling when a project looks so big that you can't even find the start button. Instead of saying, I'm going to draw today, I set a timer for exactly 20 minutes and tell myself, I'm only doing the eyes right now. That's it. It turns the giant scary mountain into a tiny hill. Most of the time, once that timer goes off, my hyperfocus has actually kicked in and I'm ready to keep going. But if I'm having a high stimulation day and I can't focus, I just stop the timer when it dings, guilt-free. Giving yourself permission to work in bursts is a game changer. Hack number 2 is all about secondary stimulation. You know how I mentioned in my indie horror video that I love the atmosphere of games like Five Nights at Freddy's and Poppy Playtime? Well, there's a reason for that. My brain needs a certain level of noise in order to stay in the zone. If I'm doing something creative, like character design, I need lo-fi or complete silence. But when I'm doing the boring stuff, like flattening colors, my brain will literally try to escape my head if I don't give it something else to do. I call this distracting the distraction. I'll put on a 3-hour-long horror deep dive, or video essay, or something that just occupies the bored part of my brain, so the artist part can actually finish the work. Match your background noise to your task difficulty, and you'll find you stop reaching for your phone every 5 minutes. Finally, hack number 3 is the most important for your mental health. It's called embracing the ugly stage. Because of the perfectionism and masking I talked about in my growing up neurodivergent story time, I used to quit the second a drawing looked bad or not good enough. But with ADHD, our brains move faster than our hands. Your sketch will look like a chaotic mess for a while, and you have to accept that it's okay. I've started giving myself permission to be messy, or grace, for the first 30 minutes of each piece. By lowering the stakes, I can bypass that all or nothing shutdown. This piece you're seeing right now, it looked like a thumbprint for eyes for the first half hour. If I hadn't pushed through that ugly stage, I would have never seen the final result. Be kind to your brain. It's doing its best to keep up with your imagination. And here's the final results. This piece represents that feeling when the chaos finally sets into something clear. Using those hacks, the timers, the background noise, and just being kind to my ugly sketches is the only reason this character exists today instead of being stuck in my head as a half-finished thought. I used to feel so much guilt when the way my brain worked. I thought being a real artist meant being perfectly organized and never struggling to start. But if you're watching and you're feeling the same way, I want you to know that your neurodivergence isn't a barrier to your creativity. Heck, it's the source of it. You just need to build a studio that fits your brain, not someone else's. I'm curious, what's one thing that helps you focus when the brain fog hits? Or is there a specific hack you want me to do a deeper dive into? Let me know in the comments. Your stories in the last video meant the world to me, and I'd love to keep the conversation going. Thank you so much for spending some time in my brain today. If you've enjoyed this, don't forget to check out my webcomic Outcast on Tapas for more of my characters and stories. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!